Alright, today I'm going to be testing the Destiny 2 on the AMD Phenom X6 1035T. It is the slowest 6-core CPU and also the oldest 6-core CPU. This CPU is missing instructions and a lot of games don't open on this, but the Destiny 2 actually does open. I am pairing this with 16GB of DDR3 RAM. The CPU also supports DDR2, but we're using DDR3 today. And I have an SSD for the boot drive, and the game drive is an SSD as well, and the graphics card is an Nvidia RTX 3060 using the latest drivers. So starting off is 1080p on the low settings. Also, MSI Afterburner's overlay does not work in this game due to its anti-cheat, so instead we are stuck with the game's built-in FPS counter, which is utterly tiny. I bet you can't even see it. It's on the top right of the screen. Either way, so we have that to tell you the frame rate, and then on the top left I have Task Manager. It tells you the RAM usage, CPU usage, hard drive usage, graphics card usage. It's not as nice as the MSI Afterburner overlay that I normally use, but this is what we have to deal with here. So, I am actually a new player to this game. I've not even heard of it before, let alone played it. This is my first time playing it, and I'm going to be doing the same starting scene for every single preset in the game, so low, medium, high, and highest. And the starting scene is pretty simple. It's basically fight a couple of robots, fight one boss, and then I quit the game and try a new setting and do it all over again. It's probably not the most intensive area in the game. Actually, I know it isn't the most intensive area in the game, but at least it's an area I can replicate. Either way, at the low settings, the game was getting about 70 to 80 frames per second, sometimes it dropped into the 60s. I don't know what the 1% lows are because I don't see that, I'm just going off what it looked like on the top right FPS counter. So, at the low settings it was getting about, 70 frames per second on average roughly. And there weren't any stutters to speak of, so it was a pretty nice and smooth experience. So after every time I change the settings, I have to restart the game for the settings to apply, which I did, and the medium settings look better, at least in my opinion, and the game doesn't actually run any worse, at least CPU-wise. It seems to be running the same, so yeah, same story, about 70 to 80 frames per second. This seems like a quite nice middle ground, at least in most games, medium settings. It's just usually the nice balance of visuals and performance, and it seems like it's the same case here. Either way, again, no stutters to speak of, it's a pretty smooth experience. So at 1080p on the high preset, the game is, well, at least at the start, it was stuttery and the CPU was maxed out when I opened the game. But it quickly smoothed out and the stutters mostly went away. There were a few noticeable stutters, significantly more than medium. I didn't even feel a single stutter on medium. On high, I felt a handful of stutters. It wasn't a big deal. I'm sure if you found a more intensive area, it might perform worse, significantly worse than medium, but it didn't seem like that big of a deal. High, I mean, yeah, it stuttered a little bit more, but the average frame rate seemed about the same. Maybe slightly lower, but it's about the same as medium, basically. So, at 1080p on the highest preset, the game was still getting about 70 to 80 frames per second, though in some areas it was actually dipping into the lower 60s or upper 50s, at least that I can see on the top right frame rate thing. And in terms of stutters, I felt quite a bit more than high. Significantly more than medium, but yeah, high and very high, there is a noticeable difference between them. But overall, it was still perfectly playable. At least to me, the game is perfectly playable on the high settings. Though, it turns out this is actually a rather easy place to run. Because later on, alright, after I tested the highest settings, I went back to medium, as that's kind of a nice middle ground, and I played the game maybe another 2 hours roughly, and the game went over and was often getting about 45 frames per second in the big open world. And that's, you know, fighting some mobs, shooting a humongous, I don't know what it was a humongous creature thing. Yeah, I don't know. I was fighting a bunch of bosses basically, and yeah, the game was performing worse. It was getting about 45 frames per second on the medium settings. It wasn't stuttery, it was just, you know, the frame rate is getting a little bit on the lower end. But again, still perfectly playable. I am not sure what would have happened if you were playing, let's say, the high or the highest settings in those situations, but at least on medium, it wasn't stuttery. Either way, that will do it for today. If the video was informative or enjoyable to watch or something, if you could leave a like, that would be amazing. It helps the video. Either way, yeah, thanks for watching, and have a good day.